Last time, we talked about becoming the endgame crisis, and at the very end, we talked about how the galactic community also has a new weapon in its toolbox that it can use to help combat that. Now, that weapon is the Custodian. So, the Custodian is basically the galactic community's designated defender. The Custodian can only be elected after the Galactic Council has been established, and has to be elected from one of the current council members. The Custodian gets extra powers that it can use to help influence the galactic community, supposedly in a way that will help to be able to defeat the crisis. Specifically, they get a couple of powers that are very similar to what the Galactic Council members get, and they also get a couple of extras. Similarly to the Galactic Council members, they can also declare emergency measures and force resolutions to the Senate floor. This actually has a shorter cooldown for the Custodian than for other council members. They also have the ability to prematurely end a session. They can end a voting period after only half of the voting period has passed, forcing the resolution to go towards whatever the vote was going towards at that point in time. So essentially they can force a resolution to be passed or rejected so long as at some point after half the voting period it's swinging that way. They also have shared intel, which allows them to gain some intel on other members of the galactic community. This has to do with the new espionage system, and I believe specifically this intel has to do with relative navy strength. They also gain the ability to freeze proposals. They can pay 200 influence and freeze a resolution for 4 years. The Custodian also unlocks a number of proposals in the galactic community, and there are a couple of interesting ones. One that seems really interesting to me is the Galactic Mobilization proposal, which increases naval capacity by 150. Now, that's a lot of naval capacity, so that's a lot of extra ships. Now, it isn't specifically stated whether this is per member or just for the Custodian, but it certainly seems like it would be per member as it is a galactic community proposal. You could also extend the Custodian ship by another 30 years, so that way you can continue being the Custodian if the crisis is still going on. The Custodian ship term limit can also be removed, allowing you to continuously be the Custodian until manually removed, which certainly is something that I would be interested in if I were the Custodian. I would want to have these powers for as long as possible. There's also the end custodianship resolution, which prematurely ends custodianship, and I'm pretty sure that's the only way to lose custodianship if the term limit has been removed. And the last one that looks pretty interesting is the Establish Galactic Defense Force. This resolution creates a galactic community fleet called the Galactic Defense Force, similar to Federation fleets. It's controlled by the Custodian, and if the Custodian loses power, it ends up becoming independent up until there's a new Custodian established. I'm not 100% sure what that means. That could just mean that it sits there and does nothing. It could also mean it has some kind of AI that it uses to try and determine where it goes and where it's needed most. I'm not sure which one it is. The designs are modified through a ship designer accessed from the Galactic Community UI, very similar to the Federation ship designer. It seems that only the Custodian will be able to build the ships, although we don't have all the info yet. It's possible that there might be some way to allow everyone to build the ships, but at this point it seems only the Custodian will be able to build ships. With these new powers, the Custodian should be able to take on whatever crisis the galaxy is currently threatened by. But what will the Custodian do after the crisis has been averted? The Custodian may just willingly give up their powers and release control back to the Galactic Council, or they may fight, not physically but diplomatically, to try and keep these powers, because they're really nice powers to have. I wouldn't want to lose them. So it's kind of an interesting concept that once the Custodian helps you beat the crisis that's currently threatening the galaxy, in a way they become the next crisis that you have to overcome. Granted, they're not threatening you physically with ships or anything like that, but it'll be a diplomatic war to try and get them removed from custodianship. So far, it looks like Nemesis is shaping up to be a really interesting DLC, because already we've got a fight between the good guys and the bad guys, between the players becoming the endgame crisis and the Custodian waging war over the galaxy. And then we get the Custodian potentially being able to wage a kind of diplomatic war against the galactic community to keep his powers. And there's actually a bit more to that we will see in the next video. So I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. I'm really excited for this DLC, and I'll see you next time.